All right, thanks, Nathan. So there, again, thanks for coming so early, everyone. So it's good to see everyone here. So as Nathan mentioned, we're going to just have a bit of a workshop about the template, the content, the technical side, the Revit side of things with the BIM-MEPaus initiative. So just a quick agenda here. Do a bit of a quick overview. Just got a few example projects to have a look at. We'll just go quickly through a bit of the template and the content functionality. So a few slides to go through. I'm not going to dwell too long on the slides, or try not to. We're going to look at the future development, what we're looking at, and then, as Nathan said, we'll open it up for a bit of a Q&A session and hopefully get some good discussion going. And as Nathan said, if we can leave questions till the end, till that Q&A session, that would be great. So yeah, Brendan Upton's my name, and Jeff Thew, as Nathan said, so we don't need to dwell on that either. Before I go into the slide, just a quick gauge of the room. Can I have a show of hands who's actively using the template or has downloaded the template? Okay, so that's good. Who's new? Who's not seen the template or any of the Revit content at all? Okay, all right, so that's good. What about who's high level, not technical, but is across, I guess, the business? Okay. All right, well that's good. That means there's a few new here, so I'll go through a bit about the initiative and just how the technical side, the Revit side, fits into it, and what we've been doing. So the current issues with delivering BIM in the MEP industry are, as what's on the screen, perceived to be too complex and difficult to adopt. These are some of the main issues: the lack of standardisation, as it's what's been discussed in the presentations yesterday, and lack of consistent and specified Revit content for MEP, and the time taken to build the content, and the lack of the clarity and the responsibilities. Okay, so nothing that you all don't know, but that's basically how it all came about. This is why we're doing what we're doing. So the purpose of the initiative as a whole, and the purpose of building the Revit specific content and the template, is to bridge this gap between the consultants and the contractors. That's the main sort of reason, I guess. As what was discussed yesterday, constructible models. Okay, so that's the whole idea of trying to sort of streamline that process and bridge that gap. So providing industry level of standardisation and consistency to shift the focus from content creation back to design. Okay, so the improved project coordination and less waste and less rework is, I guess, the goal. And so in doing that, we've basically moved forward, and over the last 4 years, as the initiative has been built, there's been this development of the 3D content, the Revit content, the manufacturer-specific content, and of course the Revit template. So just for the guys that are new to it in the room, most of you probably know this already, what's on the screen, but for those that are new to it, what's actually in the Revit template, this just gives you a bit of an idea of what's in it. I won't read through the whole list, but it gives you a bit of idea of, predefined duct types, predefined pipe types, with the routing preferences set up, view filters, templates, anything that you would expect to see in a Revit template, but making that sort of standard across the MEP realm, I guess, and sort of getting this level of consistency. We've also produced, down the bottom, it says the template outline document. So we also have this template outline document which explains how the template is built up, basically. So that's something that we are continuously evolving and continuously developing along with the template itself. So this slide's just quickly, just a little bit about how the user groups are working. Okay, so it's important to note that this content and the template is a collaborative effort. Okay, so, and a lot of you in the room are involved in it. So it's been built up from the input from the industry, from users in industry. Okay, so for those of you in the room that are new to it, just be aware that you can become involved in these user groups. So you can see here that there's been user groups set up in the different cities around the country, and that feedback gets collated and comes back to us, basically. We try and act on it as best as we can. We try and prioritise what we can actively and realistically answer at the time, and then those developments and updates should then be seen to come into the template. Okay, so some of these slides you would have seen yesterday in Warwick's presentation, but just to reiterate, some of the things about the template and with regards to generic content, and as opposed to what's in the BIM-MEPaus template. Okay, so just some examples here of some projects that are being used now, with showing things like the pipe types and the pipe fittings that are in the template, things like the Victolic projects. The Victolic pipe types, I should say, and fittings being demonstrated here in some of these plant room examples. So this is another example. Again, you probably saw a similar slide yesterday. This is another example of a model, of a Revit model that's it was pretty much constructible. Okay, so built with the BIM-MEPaus Revit kit, the BIM-MEPaus content, and shop drawings are being able to be produced from it. It's constructible, starting to bridge that gap. So this is just a bit of an example, and Jeff, if you want to have a couple of words while this video is playing.
Yeah, I think just on back a couple of things with regards to the template and standardisation. We keep using that word across the board, standardisation. The template really was to benchmark the industry, to bring everyone up to par so you could rely on the information, and it's for benefits within the consultants and contractors area. So this is sort of an example of where we were at. So we had content like this coming from consultants where they'd done design intent, hadn't used BIM-MEPaus, and from this result we had to move on and do our own development. But being able to use BIM-MEPaus and translate that now, we come up with a much better result. And really, this, not bragging on anything, but the guys sat down. I think once they worked out the heat exchange arrangement on this using all the content, it took them about an hour to lay out this plant room. So, no, it's mine. So, yeah, it just goes from that conceptual thing to physical space, actual service space requirement, all these little bits in there that, even the commissioning team sat down and looked at this and saw where their test points were on the valves and said, this is actually going to work as a plant room now. So it's a big leap from where it was at to where it's come to, and I think realistically, if we just remember that whole concept behind the template back in 2010 or 9 when it first started, that it was to plateau the industry, give reliance on a standardisation, standardisation across the industry, but it's a benchmark so that we can all build upon that with a consistent approach, using the manufacturer-specific content. The proof's in the pudding. We can build it, and that's the ultimate goal. And if consultants use that spatially, we'll end up with those results.
All right, so moving along, I'll push through these slides pretty quickly now because I'm conscious we want to try and get a bit of a good discussion going. But just to give you a bit of an idea of some of the functionalities, and this will again be good for just some of the new users. Again, an example of the duct and the pipe routing preferences and the predefined setup and the routing preferences. On the screen here is a good example of some of the work we've done with the Victolic products, building a hybrid pipe type in there that's got multiple routing preferences depending on the size, and then the material that's specified is then basically used for those size routings basically. Another example of what we're starting to build in is the duct insulation and lining, and these parameters that we're putting in to define the types of insulation, the sizes, and then to get the hatching. So this is another example of getting user input. The guys at Neck Drafting Services have helped out and started to develop something that's a solution for this scenario where we need to have step-down frames in a constructible model. This has come about as a result of certain limitations in the software with insulation and with the insulation tool, and how it doesn't quite work in terms of how it's actually constructed when you're coming from, say, line duct work to unlined or new duct work. Okay, so just a little bit about the content as well. So it's about that engagement with the manufacturers, working with the manufacturers that are coming on board now to build their content specific to their requirements and to their specifications, basically. This is just an example of our website, thinkbim-mepaus.com.au, where you can actually download browse and download the content and the template. This is just an example of, you know, all the manufacturers that are already on board, and there's more coming every week. So it's growing, so it's promising, okay? So you can be assured that it is actually a comprehensive library already, and it's growing. So, and just quickly about some of the things to be aware of and to be able to take advantage of in the functionality of the content. Things like clearance zones, being able to clash clearance zones and turn them on and off depending on plant room access and things like that. Being able to use this stuff in clash detection software and being able to actually actively, you know, change your design. I won't dwell too long on this one. I put this one in. You would have seen it yesterday. You know, this is some of the workflows that are being developed up with regards to how we're going to deal with generic content and the manufacturer content, and moving from a design model to a construction model. And
actually, while you're there, it's probably a good point. Who in the room, like consultants? How many consultants in the room? Oh, geez. So I'm asking you guys directly then. Legality-wise, using manufacturer-specific content, would you use a generic versus a manufacturer-specific? Do you have any issues with that? That's a prickly question. So,
usually just use manufacturer studies.
yeah. So a hand up. If you had manufacturer-specific, you'd use it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we have a problem with that because we have to go to numerous suppliers to get a price.
Yep.
But I sort of agree with what Brendan's come up with, an idea of building the content and then having an LOD version in the build. So you're using manufacturer objects.
Yeah.
That just happens to be a generic.
Yeah. So stripped down data-wise, and this there's a number of different. Like, sorry, we're getting right in the middle of it, but it's a key aspect to it because we are looking at foundation families that are based on a generic approach to suit the consultants. And I talk to a lot of guys that use it around the traps, and they go, if you gave me accurate, information I could represent, but
it's usually at the management level that they have an issue from a legality sort of thing. So, you know, if we can look at it, that we can have stripped down, like I want to use CellMac for example, but remove all the attributed data for the purpose of your consultant specification. So
I think it's just removing the name, actually. What you just followed Brendan suggested was a generic version of that object. It's, for all intents and purposes, whatever manufacturer, but it's a generic version of that.
yeah, it's an important topic, and this is a workflow that's going to get, you know, massage. We're going to develop it, and so it's with the input from you guys that we're going to get it to work, I guess. So, okay. So just to be aware that these are the official websites. Okay, so BIM-MEPaus.com.au. This is the official AMCA website. This is where you can go to get the official BMA standards and the workflows and the specifications. The one at the bottom, thinkbim-mepaus.com.au. That's hosted by ourselves, A2K. That's where you can go to actually access the Revit content and the template to download. Okay, so just be aware of that. All right, and then just the last few slides, and then we can go to town with a discussion. But we don't have too long. We'll just keep that in mind. But let's get some good discussion going. But just to give you a heads up of what we're thinking of. These are sort of the main things that I've taken out, and we've taken out collectively of the main areas that need to be developed. There's lots more. We know there's a lot of work to be done, but we are enthusiastic, just as you guys are, to make it better. And so let's do that. But basically, increase the resources of all the MEP disciplines. Okay, so it's important. I always like to sort of just reiterate that this is not just a tool for mechanical contractors. Yes, it's very important, but the vision is actually that it is a whole construction industry approach. It's a building services approach. It's not just mechanical. Okay.
Any electrical in the room?
Good question.
Go.
Yeah.
Hydraulics.
Input.
Hydraulics. These user groups need more of that side. There's groups there, but electrical input, hydraulics input. I've sort of got a bunch of guys in Sydney. I'm trying to drive into those groups now because it's the missing gap. I do a lot of coordination on major projects, and key aspects of that is finding the electrical guys showing up with a consultant-based model, drawing cable tray that's 50 mil and it's actually fire rated tray that's 150 mil, and it's not 600 wide, it's 678, and then it's got uni-stripe, blah, 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 and we've got a clash issue. And sometimes actually a fundamental design issue. So, these are key aspects that we need to get those guys' involvement and build it in. And it's for the benefit of your design spatials, but right through to construction. Yeah.
I read the point that you need to get fire on board as well, because in South Australia you're actually starting to lose it already.
Yeah, you got Steve Novice over there.
Other systems which are inferior.
Yeah,
nonetheless, they're going.
Yeah, it's a definite. And there's a staging requirement too, and an understanding from construction staging that needs to be put back into, I suppose, the design consultant's world, because there's quite often an awful lot of coordination, design concept built around that, and there's some fantastic models, but the constructability of that moving through. So that's a cross, of education between those parties, and those groups coming together can only feed back into those organisations and benefit all.
So the current focus on improving the features to better engage the design consultants. I guess we've spoken about that already. But if this process is going to work, that there needs to be, a widespread uptake of it. So we're trying to address that as we go. Absolutely. So this third point here, an industry agreed standardised system names and colours. Okay, so it exists in the template already, but some of the user groups we've had discussions about, further refining that, making it better. There's been some really good feedback, especially from the senior user group, Duncan and Al and guys as well. So that's actively being looked at, and how can we make it better? That's what it's all about. Okay, and then the big one, which I'd like to open the discussion about as well, mainly the shared parameter files. Get your guys' input and thoughts about this. You saw some really good demonstrations yesterday from Warwick about sort of the whole sort of idea and the workflow. But obviously, we want to have you guys involved as well to actually, have some input and let's get it to be the best it can be. But basically, building that shared parameter file. Getting that working, it's a big point, and it's going to be a big step when we can get it going. But we are actively working on that as what was demonstrated yesterday, and So
Warwick's released his paper, I believe that's what he's talking about yesterday. He's released his paper around it. So the biggest key aspect of understanding around the shared parameter debate that's still going, and even last night it was going, but content-based parameters, project-based parameters, and we're sort of working to a conclusion on that, but everyone input, because it's a decision that's got to be made now, and if we're talking 500, Warwick showed that representation, 500 parameters that manage across the project. If it could be that 250 at the design level, then you've got to manage 250 parameters, and we've got to manage 250 on that. It's more likely going to be 100 to 400, but it's just something to consider, because it's a snapshot in time. It could be a specific project, and there could be revision iterations of that later. So you might have to look at it as an approach of, at this point in time, we've got a shared parameter file we're going to use on this project, and that's evolved. So these are all the little nitty-gritties of that discussion that needs to be had, and feedback, comments that need to be incorporated. Okay? Yeah.
We did a shared parameters file that we've obviously given on to Warwick to put into the mix.
Yep.
We had about 990 different parameters on that to cover all different equipment types.
Yep.
What's your thoughts on the model size influence on that? Say if you've got 1,000 different bits of equipment in one model, which you might have on a reasonably sized floor, and you've got 1,000 parameters attached to that.
I did a data test probably 3 versions ago, and it was just to demonstrate the data collection of that. And you take a pump and you put a bare pump in there, and you have X amount of parameters, and you can see the file size increase by a portion. If you threw 20 of those out, it actually didn't increase the file size as per 20 of those objects. The calculator, it was only minimal. So when you loaded the bulk data in, there was a proportion. I think you don't have. There's another slide that actually showed from Autodesk the data embedded and how it multiplies out. It doesn't actually directly relate to the number of times you copy it. So, but it's definitely
manageable.
Yeah, it is manageable, but it's definitely something we've got to keep an eye on, because I think I took a Grundfos pump early in the development stage and populated it with 120 sort of fields, and then loaded it into a project. But I arrayed it something like 400 times, and we're not going to have 400 pumps on a project. That's sort of Grogfoss would be very happy with that.
You could have a couple hundred VAV boxes on the floor.
Yeah, well, VAV boxes, you know, you're talking 10 to 20 sort of parameter field. So it's that balance when people talk about model bloat. A lot of model bloat in MEP comes from the systems connectivity and the analytical systems in the background that actually give performance degradation.
And undefined systems.
Yeah. So
not being managed well.
The data-wise, you could actually go through. There's a system browser. You could go through, delete every system in an MEP project, and all of a sudden your performance increase would be astonishing. So, but you'd lose all your connectivity between those objects.
I mean, that's a good question. How many of the contractors are actually doing any analysis in Revit files?
Yeah.
I mean, because we do a lot of analysis electrically and mechanically.
Yep.
And we find that slows the model down horrendously. Electrically in particular, funnily enough. We've got models which we just can't operate with. Mm-hmm. You know, we did Bega Hospital. When we had the calculation to do the loading back to the panels, the model was taking 30 minutes to synchronise.
I'd say...
How many contractors are actually doing analysis?
Well,
raise your hands.
We started and then we broke it.
Yes.
Because as soon as we started chopping it up into manufacturable lengths, we exceeded the maximum number of pieces allowed in the system.
Yeah.
So then Revit automatically started to split our systems up into random systems.
Yeah.
We just go.
It becomes high maintenance, and this is part of the reality world of, at some point in time, we've got to put duct in the shop, put it out on the floor. So, as part of our process within Coombs, we were saying everyone keep it connected, not just for the benefit of the analytical systems, but for connectivity, because I love finding models where a piece of duct sitting down here. Yeah, it's just it makes my day. You know. But you get to that draw a line point where you just break it. I mean, we've looked at logical connectors, even linking between files and transferring data between files. But I'd say look at labs at the moment, or keep your eye on labs, because there's maybe some performance improvements that are coming on labs. So, or subscription advantage tools. So just keep your eye on that in the next couple of weeks.
And the other question on the shared parameter file, when we collected all the information in Sydney with yourself, and we got, what, 6 or 7 companies, and we got to 3,500 parameters.
Yeah.
Where does that sit with what Warwick delivered yesterday? Because I haven't seen anything from Warwick, so I was a little bit surprised.
I think
has that taken into consideration all the parameters from those consultants?
There was I believe from talking with Warwick, there was a master spreadsheet that was then cross-referenced so that they could actually refine down the duplicates, and then the naming convention was applied to it. So you may not recognise it, but
it was taken on board. Yeah,
it has been ticked off. So I haven't had a chance. I've been busy to delve into it, and I haven't been to the user group in Sydney for a little while.
So what I thought was quite interesting is there's obviously a lot of development down here in Melbourne, and then we do user groups in Sydney. And I think what we need, maybe, and I spoke to Nathan about it, is that I think we need to populate those 2 user groups in particular.
One thing, and I'll mention it now, I might get in trouble, but one thing we're thinking, one thing we're thinking is maybe we make these user groups, maybe we make it an online forum so that it actually does become a bit more of a national community, people, and it's a bit more visible. People can say, I don't know, maybe that's the answer, and then we can actually have that stuff up there.
Chief representative from each user group as a mediator on the forum, and then ultimately it comes down to the BIM-MEPaus panel saying, tick, valid, let's push it out to A2K and build. So Nathan's got some ideas about setting up, and so we can have some chats and talk about that. Maybe that is the way to go. Maybe we can do that if that's going to help that process.
Just a comment on that, from that 3,500, Duncan, a lot of it was actually particular consultants, different factors and that.
That's right, it was.
So so it was not a very good amount.
No, I think
but it's a good example of how it can actually. I mean, this is why it's taken so long. And a shared parameter is not something that you can do lightly, and it's so easy to get out of control. And it's just an example. All of a sudden, you've got 3,000 parameters. So that is the reason why this has not just happened overnight. We've got to do this wisely. It's got to be done. And But
I think just to reiterate that step about making a decision around project-based shared parameters or content-based parameters, I think that's a big. I know where I stand on that, and I think I've been in Brendan's ear the last couple of days. put your votes in.
Yeah, it's a decision that's got to be made, but yeah, it's an important one. Yeah.
Any other questions?
We're conscious of time, so we've probably got 2 more minutes, I think. So if there is one more question, otherwise, yeah.
The add-in for the content.
Okay, yeah, good question. The add-in is not available. We are looking at certain API things, and that is something that is on our radar to do. But there's I can tell you there's nothing with the BIM-MEPaus template at the moment that's coming. But we are looking into that space, and there's things that we've got ideas to do. But if you guys have got, that's
So
right.
vote in the room.
Yeah, if you guys have got ideas for
API
tools,
adding content into your project.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And-
I'm a bit sort of drag drop.
And again,
catalogs.
that's something that if we had an online forum, we could, you could have a section there of ideas for the API, It might become 500 very quickly, but, like maybe that's another place where we can say, right, that's, what are the top 10 ideas of what we could do API-wise and back-end programming-wise to help make this thing even better, so, yeah. All right, last question. Great.
When we're finding content that needs to be reviewed, there's a feedback process that we can get it to the teams.
At the moment, there's on the Think BIM-MEPaus website, there's a feedback form there. There's a tab to go in to feedback. That may get refined that process. But yeah, at the moment there is a feedback avenue through the website. So through Think BIM-MEPaus. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, so if you see better content, family, something that's not performing too well.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's being used already. We are getting feedback through there. So yeah, it's just a tab in the website. Where you can write that feedback through. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I think introduce Nathan back up to the.
Thank you, Brendan.